I learned later that a child doesn't truly grow up the first time they lie, or the first time they have their heart broken. They grow up the first time they realize their parents aren't who they thought they were. I grew up at 7 on a snowy New Year's Eve, when I discovered that my father couldn't handle losing. After Thomas called Pong on that 8 of bamboos, the basement went quiet. Not ordinary quiet. The kind of quiet where everyone knows something bad is about to happen. My father didn't draw, didn't look at his tiles. He just stared at Thomas, unblinking. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times, and only later did I understand. That wasn't anger. That was fear. Uncle Robert tried to smooth things over. David, bad luck tonight. Don't rush it. My father didn't smile. He lit a cigarette slow, took a drag, then another. Then out of nowhere he asked, "When did you start going for a pure hand?" The air froze. Robert's smile went stiff. Kevin put down his teacup. Even the people chatting nearby went silent, because everyone knew that question wasn't about the game. It was about, "When did you start playing me?" Thomas looked up at my father. His face gave nothing away. "What do you mean?" he said. My father smiled, a smile I'd never seen before. "Don't pretend," he said. "You know what I'm after." The whole basement was dead quiet. Robert stood up fast. "David, that's enough." My father slammed the table. Bang! Mahjong tiles scattered everywhere. I jumped terrified, because this was the first time I'd ever seen my father lose his temper. At home he was the gentlest man alive, but now he'd turned into someone else. "I've had enough." He stood up, eyes bloodshot. "Why does this keep happening? Why is it that every time I'm about to win, you already know?" No one dared to speak. Thomas stayed seated, solid as a mountain. After a long silence, he spoke slowly. "David, you're not losing to me." My father laughed, cold. "Then who am I losing to?" Thomas looked at him for a long time, so long that even breathing seemed to stop in that basement. Then he said it. "You're losing to the man who already lost 20 years ago." In that instant, I watched my father's face go white. Not angry, not shocked, afraid, truly afraid. Robert jumped up. "Thomas!" But it was too late. My father walked over to Thomas step by step, his voice shaking. "What do you mean?" Thomas didn't look away. He raised his head and said quietly, "David, you don't want to beat me. You just want to prove that you weren't the one who killed Daniel that night." Boom! My mind went blank. Daniel. That was the first time I'd ever heard that name, and the first time I watched every face in that basement change at once. My father stood there like he'd been shot. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I'd never seen him like this. He was my dad, the man who fixed cars, fixed lights, held me up to watch fireworks. But now he looked like a kid who'd done something wrong. After a long time, my father laughed. That laugh still haunts me. "So," he said, "you think it was my fault too?" The basement went dead silent. For the first time, Thomas lowered his head. He didn't answer, because sometimes silence is the only answer. My father stepped back, then back again. Then he flipped the table. Crash. Mahjong tiles flew everywhere. White tiles like snow scattered across the floor. Someone screamed. Someone stood up. Someone grabbed my father. But I couldn't hear any of it, because I just learned that what adults fear most isn't losing money. It's realizing they've spent 20 years not forgiving themselves. My father turned and left without looking at anyone. But at the door, Thomas called out, "David." My father stopped. Thomas said softly, "I never blamed you." My father didn't turn around. He just stood there for a long time. Then he said something that would give me nightmares for years. But I blame myself. That night, the snow fell hard. And I learned that some people play Mahjong their whole lives, not for money. They're betting on whether, if they could go back, they could save someone who's already gone. What I didn't know was that tomorrow, my mother would tell me a secret even worse than Daniel. I learned later that the most terrifying secret in a family isn't that someone lied. It's that everyone knows the truth and agrees never to speak it. I came face to face with that kind of secret the day after Thomas and my father fell apart. That night, my father didn't come home. My mother sat in the living room with the lights off, staring out the window. Snow fell all night. As a kid, I thought adults didn't sleep because they weren't tired. I learned later, the ones who can't sleep aren't rested, they're afraid to close their eyes. At 2 in the morning the door opened. My father came back. His hair was covered in snow. His clothes were wet. His face was white as death. I hid at the top of the stairs watching. My mother didn't ask, "Where were you?" She didn't ask why he was so late. She just looked at him and said, "David, did you tell Emma?" My heart stopped. "Tell me what?" My father stood there like a trapped man. After a long time he shook his head. "No." My mother laughed. Not a happy laugh. A disappointed one. 20 years, she said. How much longer are you going to lie? It was the first time I'd ever seen my mother angry, and it was scarier than my father's rage. My father hung his head, said nothing. My mother stood up slowly and walked over to him. "You think you're the only one who lived through that night?" My father looked up, eyes red. "Susan, don't." But she didn't stop. "Why shouldn't I say it? Thomas is dying. Daniel's been dead for 20 years. Who are you still lying to?" I trembled behind the stairs, because for the first time I realized my mother knew, and she might know even more. My father suddenly shouted, "Enough!" The whole house shook. I started crying. It was the first time I'd ever heard him yell at my mother. Then silence. My mother didn't cry, didn't back down. She just looked at him, her own eyes red. And then she said it. "David, Daniel's death wasn't an accident." Boom! The world stopped. My father's face went white. I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean, not an accident?" My father stepped back, his voice trembling. "You promised me. You promised you'd never tell." My mother laughed, tears running down her face. "I promised because I loved you, not because you were right." I couldn't understand any of it. I only knew that this name Daniel was tearing apart everything I thought I knew. My mother sat down slowly, looked out the window and said softly, "Emma." She'd finally noticed me. "Come here." I couldn't move. My father closed his eyes like a man surrendering. I walked over slowly and sat beside her. She took my hand. It was cold. Then she told me a story I'd carry for the next 20 years. 1987 Houston. The night before Daniel died. The last person who saw him. She paused and looked at my father. "Was your father?" My mind went blank. I looked at my father, the man who always protected me, always stayed with me, always feared losing. Right then, he looked like a man already sentenced. He lowered his head and said softly, "Yes." Outside, the snow kept falling, and I understood for the first time. Sometimes you think you're afraid of a secret. Then you find out you're really afraid that the secret is true. What I didn't know was that tomorrow, I'd see Daniel's photo for the first time, and finally understand why Thomas and my father had spent 30 years playing a game they could never end. I learned later that you never truly forget someone, not because you love them too much, but because the last time you saw them there was something you never said. Daniel was the thing my father and Thomas could never say out loud. That night I didn't sleep. Neither did my father. I could hear him in the living room, lighting cigarette after cigarette. Click, click, click. The sound of a lighter all night. The next morning the snow stopped. The sun came out bright and blinding. But for the first time I realized that light could be scary too. My father didn't go to work. My mother didn't speak. Breakfast sat on the table. Nobody touched it. Finally I asked the question, "Daddy, how did Daniel die?" The air went still. My father wouldn't look at me. Neither would my mother. After a long time, he stood up and went into the bedroom. I thought he wasn't going to answer. But a few minutes later, he came back carrying an old cardboard box, one I'd never seen before. It was worn with moving stickers still on it. He set it on the table, sat down, and for the first time he opened it in front of me. Inside photos. Old yellowed photos. Faces I didn't recognize. He searched for a long time, then pulled one out. "This is Daniel," he said. I took the photo and froze. He was so young. Daniel in the picture looked barely 20. He wore a denim jacket and sat at a Mahjong table laughing. Next to him, young Thomas, and young my father. 3 of them close together like family. Without knowing why I started crying. Because I realized, Thomas hadn't just lost a brother. My father hadn't just lost a friend. They'd both lost their youth, My father stared at the photo for a long time. Then he said softly, "Daniel was the smartest of the three of us, and the one who felt most like family." It was the first time I'd ever heard him say family, not friend. Family. He went on. 1981. We just come to America. Shared the same basement. Washed dishes together. Moved furniture together. Learned English together. Played Mahjong together. Went hungry together. He laughed as he talked, then his eyes turned red. "Emma, you know, Thomas and I, we never had brothers. So Daniel was our brother." My chest ached, because I suddenly understood why Thomas never married. Why my father lost for 20 years. They'd never moved on. My father pulled out another photo. This one was in a hospital. Daniel in a bed. Thomas sitting beside him. My father standing at the door. None of them were smiling. I had a bad feeling. This is... My father closed his eyes. The day it happened, my breath stopped. What happened? He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "That night, the three of us played Mahjong." I went rigid. Again Mahjong. Why did everything come back to Mahjong? He continued, "It was Daniel's last game, and my last win against him." A chill ran down my spine, because I remembered Thomas saying, "Daniel's last win against me." But my father said, "My last win against him." Two different stories. In that moment I realized maybe for 20 years more than one person had been lying. My father hung his head and said softly, "Emma." After that night, Daniel said something to me. "What?" I asked. He looked up and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. Real terror. Then he said slowly, he said, "David, if I die tomorrow, would you regret winning tonight?" Outside, the sun disappeared behind clouds. The room went dark. And I learned that some words can destroy a person forever. Because the next day, Daniel really did die. I learned later that the most painful thing isn't discovering someone lied to you. It's realizing they lied to protect you. And what's worse, you don't know whether to hate them or thank them. That night, after my father told me Daniel's words, the room was suffocatingly quiet. "If I died tomorrow, would you regret winning tonight?" That was Daniel's last question to my father. I stared at him and realized, 20 years later he was still living in that night. I asked, "What happened next?" My father didn't answer. He just held the photo staring for a long time. Finally he said, "I thought he was joking." My heart sank, because I realized, the worst thing isn't someone predicting their own death. It's that you didn't believe them. My father began to tell the story. 1987 Houston. Winter. The three of them shared an old apartment building. Daniel had just been laid off. Thomas had barely slept for months, worried about his brother's health. My father had just gotten his first real job. It should have been a happy night. So Daniel said, "Let's play Mahjong all night." It was their favorite thing to do. My father smiled. That night Daniel seemed so happy. Unnaturally happy. I had a bad feeling. My father went on, "Daniel bought a lot of beer, fried chicken, pizza." He said, "Nobody holds back tonight." Thomas laughed. "Since when do we hold back?" Daniel laughed even harder. "Then tonight. Really try to beat me." At the time I didn't understand. Later I realized, someone about to leave is most afraid not of death, but of being treated differently. The game started. For the first few hours everyone was laughing. Daniel kept losing. Thomas kept losing. Only my father kept winning. Then my father stopped. He looked out the window, his voice shaking. "Emma, I was really happy that night." It was the first time he'd admitted he was happy, because he'd finally won. Beat Thomas. Beat Daniel. Beat everyone. Then came the last hand. Daniel stopped laughing. He lit a cigarette and looked at my father. "David, this hand you have to win." My father was confused. Thomas too. "Why?" Daniel smiled. "Because I don't want you to have regrets." My blood ran cold. That was such a strange thing to say. My father said, "I thought he was drunk." So he kept playing, kept winning, until the end. Daniel threw out a tile, an 8 of bamboos. The air stopped, because my father called who a big win. And Daniel lost. Completely. My father said it was the happiest win of his life. and the one he regretted most. Because after the game, Daniel didn't go home. He got in his car and drove off alone. Before he left, he stood in the doorway, turned back and smiled at my father. "David, thank you." Then he looked at Thomas. "Brother, don't wait for me." Then he was gone. He never came back. The next morning, the police called. Highway accident. Daniel was dead. At the scene, they found a mahjong tile, an 8 of bamboos. I couldn't breathe, because I finally understood why Thomas kept that 8. Why my father lost for 20 years. Why neither of them could leave that table. They both believed. If they hadn't won that night, Daniel would still be alive. Just then my mother said something that made my blood freeze. "David, you still haven't told Emma the truth." My father's face went white again. I was stunned. What else? My mother looked at him and said word by word, "Daniel's accident, it wasn't an accident at all." I learned later that the scariest moment in life isn't hearing a secret. It's finding out the secret you already knew was a lie. That night, my entire childhood was overturned. After my mother said those words, the room went terrifyingly quiet. Daniel's accident, it wasn't an accident. My ears started ringing. The wind blew outside. The clock ticked, but the world felt frozen. I looked at my father. He didn't argue, didn't get angry, didn't deny it. He just sat there, head down like a man waiting for a verdict. For the first time, I was afraid of my own father, because I suddenly realized that a person's silence might not be innocence. It might be that he couldn't speak. My voice trembled. "What do you mean? What do you mean it wasn't an accident?" My mother didn't answer right away. She looked at my father, waiting, but he still said nothing. Finally, she closed her eyes and said softly, "Before Daniel left, he left a letter." My mind went blank. A letter? What letter? Why had no one told me? Why didn't Thomas say anything? Why had my father never mentioned it? My mother's voice grew quieter. The police ruled it as drowsy driving, so the case was closed. She paused and looked at my father. But we all knew that wasn't true. My father suddenly said, "Susan." For the first time, his voice begged, not angry, pleading. But my mother didn't stop. Because that letter, it was addressed to David. I whipped my head toward my father. He closed his eyes. Tears finally fell. I'd never seen my father cry. Not once. But now he was sobbing like a child. My mother stood slowly and went into the bedroom. Minutes later, she came back with a yellowed manila envelope. Edges frayed like it had been opened and closed 1,000 times. On the front, just one line. "For David. Don't tell Thomas." My hands shook, because I suddenly knew. This wasn't a story. It was a suicide note. My father didn't stop me. He had no strength left. I opened it slowly. Inside, one sheet of paper. The handwriting was messy, rushed like someone writing at their last moment. The first sentence stopped my heart. "David, if you're reading this, it means I lost my bet." Bet? I read on. "I always thought that if I left first, Thomas would live better." Tears hit the paper, because I finally understood. Daniel wasn't talking about Mahjong. He was talking about himself. The doctor said I had 6 months at most. The world went dead silent. My father covered his face. My mother closed her eyes. And I finally knew why Daniel had to lose that night. Because he already knew he was dying. Thomas would never give up on anyone. So if I told him, he'd destroy himself. But you're different, David. You can take a loss. My father sobbed out loud. Because for the first time in 20 years, someone was telling him he hadn't killed Daniel. The last lines. So help me lose one last time. Help me win one last time. Help Thomas believe it was just an accident. And if he still can't let go, keep playing with him. Because sometimes people just need a reason to live. Daniel. December 23, 1987. No one spoke in the room. After a long time, my father looked up at me, for the first time like a failure. He said, "Emma, I lost for 30 years. Not to Thomas. Not to Daniel. To myself." In that moment, I understood why Thomas's last words were, "Don't be like me." Because he and my father had both spent 30 years guarding a secret, and they both trapped themselves in the winter of 1987. But what I didn't know was that Thomas's last secret for me wasn't in that letter at all. It was on the 8 of bamboos that had been missing for 30 years. I learned later that the scariest truth in the world isn't that someone lied to you. It's that one day you realize everyone was protecting you, and only you were hurting yourself. Daniel's letter sat on the table. No one spoke. My father cried. My mother cried. But I couldn't, because I didn't know who to hate. Daniel? He was just afraid for his brother. Thomas? He was just afraid my father would break. My father? He was just afraid he hadn't saved anyone. For the first time I realized, some stories don't have villains, only people who can't move on. That night, I went to my room and poured out Thomas's Mahjong set again. Clack, clack, clack. Same sound as when I was little. I laid out all the 8s of bamboos on my bed. 1, 2, 3, and the one Thomas left me. 4. But something felt wrong. Because Thomas had said on his deathbed, that 8 Daniel's last win against me. But my father said, Daniel's last loss to me. Who was lying? I pulled out the photos, Thomas's letter, Daniel's note. Then my hands stopped, because I realized everyone kept talking about Daniel's last Mahjong game, but no one had ever said whether Daniel could actually play. My blood went cold, because I remembered, Thomas never taught me Mahjong skills. He taught me to read people. And now, for the first time, I was reading the people in the story. I ran out to the living room. My father was still there, aged 10 years overnight. I asked, Daddy, was Daniel good at Mahjong? My father froze. I'd never seen that look on him before, pure fear. After a long time, he shook his head. No. My mind exploded. No. Then how did a Mahjong game ruin everyone's lives? My father's lips trembled. Daniel couldn't really play at all. I felt the world spin. Because the story I'd heard for 20 years might have been a complete lie. My father went on. That night, Daniel never even sat down. He just watched from the side. My breath stopped. Impossible. If Daniel didn't play, then who lost? Who won? And who threw that 8 of bamboos? My father closed his eyes, tears streaming again. And he said a name that shattered my entire world. The person I actually played Mahjong with that night was Thomas. The room went dead silent. And finally I understood why Thomas kept that 8. Why he lost on purpose for 20 years. Why he said, don't be like me. Because that night, the one who really lost everything wasn't Daniel. It was Thomas. My father's voice was raw, like a drowning man. Daniel was in the kitchen. He told us, if one day he wasn't here, we had to keep living for him. But neither of us could do it. And I finally understood why Thomas said, we were never playing Mahjong. Because that night, they weren't betting on winning or losing. They were betting on who would live. Just then, my father stood and walked into the bedroom. Minutes later, he came back with a metal box, one I'd never seen. He set it in front of me and said softly, Emma, inside. This is what Thomas asked me to give you 30 years later. My hands shook, because I realized Thomas's last secret for me was only just beginning. I learned later that a person's true legacy isn't what they leave behind. It's what they finally want you to understand. And Thomas's last secret for me wasn't about Mahjong or Daniel or even my father. It was about me. The metal box was old, green, rusted at the edges, like it had been opened and closed many times. My father set it on the table but didn't open it. He just stared at it, like he was looking at something he'd always been afraid to face. I asked, when did he give you this? My father said softly, 1997. My heart jumped. 1997, the year Thomas was hospitalized. The year he first gave me his Mahjong set. My father continued. He said, if Emma ever starts asking why, give it to her. Why? Again. I realized Thomas had never taught me answers. Only questions. My hand shook as I opened the box. Inside, no Mahjong. No photos. No money. Just 3 things. 1, a key. 2, a yellowed piece of paper. 3, a videotape. I froze. A videotape? In 1997, who leaves a videotape for a 7-year-old girl? My father's face went pale when he saw it. That's impossible. I'd never seen him look so scared. What is it? I asked. My father stared at the tape, his voice trembling. This shouldn't exist anymore. My stomach dropped. because I suddenly realized this tape might be bigger than Daniel's letter. I picked up the paper. Thomas's handwriting. Just one line. Emma, don't believe anyone's memory. Not even mine. I couldn't breathe. Don't believe anyone's memory? Who's my father's? His own. Daniel's? Then another line below. Because everyone is protecting themselves. In that moment, I thought of every story I'd been told for 20 years. My father said Daniel lost to him. Thomas said Daniel won. My mother said Daniel's death wasn't an accident. Daniel said he'd lost a bet. But Thomas was telling me, don't trust any of it. A chill ran down my spine, because I realized for the first time, maybe everyone was telling the truth, or maybe none of them were. My father suddenly stood. Emma, don't watch it. It was the first time I'd ever seen him afraid of something. Not losing money, not Thomas, but a videotape. Why? I asked. He closed his eyes. After a long time, he said words I'd never forget. Because that tape has Daniel's last day on it. My heart stopped. Last day? Footage. Who recorded it? Why? My father's voice dropped to a whisper. Because that day, Thomas brought a camcorder. My mind went blank. Thomas recorded that day? Recorded Daniel? Recorded the Mahjong game? Recorded the truth? In that moment, I finally understood why Thomas left me not an 8, not a letter, but a videotape. Because some truths, words lie, memories lie, tears lie. But a camera doesn't. What I didn't know was that tomorrow, when I found an old VCR and pressed play, I'd discover for the first time. Daniel knew he was going to die the whole time. I learned later that the most desperate moment for a person isn't when they cry, or beg, or fall apart. It's when they start planning how others should live after they're gone. And Daniel spent his last day doing exactly that. The next day I stayed home from school. My father didn't go to work either. He sat in the living room awake all night. On the table sat the green metal box and the videotape. For the first time I saw that when my father was scared of something, he looked like a little kid. My mother found an old VCR, the bulky kind from the 90s. My father stared at it, his hands shaking. He said, Emma, after you watch this, you might hate me. I didn't answer, because I no longer knew who to believe. The VCR word. Snow. Black screen. Then the picture came on. December 22nd, 1997. 10:17 a.m. The camera shook. I could hear Thomas's voice. Daniel, are you ready? Then a young man appeared in the frame. I froze, because this was the first time I'd ever seen Daniel alive. Not a photo, not a memory. The real Daniel. He was younger than in the pictures, wearing a denim jacket, smiling almost exactly like my father. He waved at the camera. Thomas, stop filming. I looked terrible. Behind the camera, Thomas laughed. What if nobody remembers you later? Daniel paused. Then he suddenly smiled. A smile that made me cry. Because I knew he already knew he was dying. And he was still laughing. The tape went on. The three of them sat at a table. Thomas, my father, Daniel. They drank, talked, laughed. It looked like any ordinary night. Until Daniel suddenly asked, David, if one day I'm not here, would you take care of Thomas? The room on the tape went quiet. My father on the screen laughed and said, You're crazy. Take care of him yourself. Daniel laughed back brighter. What if? Then my father turned serious. He said, If that day ever comes, I'll take your place. I'll look after him for the rest of my life. My tears fell, because I finally understood why my father had lost for 30 years. He'd actually done it. The tape continued. 3 in the afternoon. They started playing Mahjong. I held my breath. I was about to see the game that changed everything. But I was wrong. Daniel didn't sit down. He stood beside them watching, laughing, occasionally handing out cigarettes or pouring drinks. The only ones playing were my father and Thomas. My blood went cold, because I suddenly realized, for 30 years nobody had lied to me. They just remembered wrong, or wanted to remember wrong. On the tape, Thomas kept winning. My father kept losing. But my father didn't get mad because Daniel kept laughing. Until 10 that night. Daniel stood up. He said, Last hand, play it for real. Then he pulled a Mahjong tile from his pocket and placed it on the table. An 8 of bamboos. The whole room went quiet. My father on the tape froze. Thomas froze. Daniel smiled. Whoever wins this gets the tile. I couldn't breathe, because I finally knew why everyone remembered the 8. It wasn't a Mahjong tile. It was Daniel's last gift to the living. The last hand ended. The winner was my father. He took the 8. Daniel smiled. Then he looked at my father and said the words that changed everyone. "David, thank you." My father laughed. "For what?" Daniel looked at the camera for a few seconds. Then he said softly, "Thank you for being willing to live for me." The world went silent, because I finally understood. Daniel had never lost the bet. He'd won it. He'd bet right. My father really had lived for him for 30 years. And then on the tape, Thomas, who'd been holding the camera the whole time, asked the question that broke me. "Daniel, if Emma ever sees this tape someday, what do you want to say to her?" Daniel looked up. For the first time, he looked straight into the lens. Straight into me 30 years later. I learned later that the most painful thing in life isn't losing someone. It's hearing the words they left for you years later, when you can no longer answer. The tape kept playing. The picture wobbled. Thomas's hand was shaking. Daniel turned slowly, facing the camera for the first time. Facing me 30 years later. He smiled. That smile, I'd later see it on my father's face. On Thomas's. On many people who were about to leave. Not joy. Release. He looked into the lens and waved softly. Emma. My breath stopped. It was the first time I'd ever heard him say my name. A man who'd been dead for 30 years looking right at me. He said, "If you're seeing this, it means Thomas lost." Behind the camera, Thomas laughed and said, "Nonsense." Daniel laughed harder. "No, Thomas. We all lose." The room went quiet, because I realized for the first time Daniel knew everything. He knew he was dying. He knew Thomas couldn't move on. He knew my father would carry guilt. He even knew that 30 years later I'd be sitting here watching him. He went on, "Emma, you're probably grown up by now. Maybe 20, maybe 30. Either way, you're definitely older than me." He laughed at his own joke, but I couldn't stop crying, because Daniel would be 29 forever, and I'd already outlived him. He continued, "I don't know what Thomas will tell you about me, or what David will say. So, I want to speak for myself." He paused, and for the first time his smile faded. "Emma, I don't want to die." My world went completely silent, because it was the first honest thing he said in the whole tape. Not comfort, not jokes, not bravery. The truth. "I'm scared. Really scared. I don't want to leave Thomas. I don't want to leave David. And I don't want them to remember me." His eyes turned red. Because being remembered, it's exhausting. No one in the room spoke. My father was sobbing. My mother had lowered her head. And I finally understood why Thomas kept that 8, why my father lost for 30 years. They weren't remembering Daniel. They were refusing to lose him. Daniel wiped his eyes and smiled again. "But if someone really has to remember me, I hope it's not because I died. I hope it's because I lived." My tears spilled over, because I finally understood. Daniel's greatest fear wasn't death. It was being turned into regret. He looked back into the lens and said one last time, "Emma, if you grow up and find yourself living for someone who's already gone, stop. Because living for someone else, it's exhausting." He smiled just like in the photos. Just like my father when he was young. Just like Thomas when he was young. Then he said his final words. "Tell David that night he really won. He really did. So stop losing." The tape ended. The screen went to snow. The whole room fell silent. My father sat there like a child who just lost his family. 30 years. 30 long years. He'd finally heard it. And I finally understood why Thomas left me the tape. Because some people will never forgive themselves, unless the one who's gone tells them with their own voice, "It wasn't your fault."